Story 2 of the Fairy Ring. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by MCY. The Fairy Ring, edited by Kate Douglas Wiggin and Nora Archibald Smith. Story 2, The Golden Lantern, Golden Goat, and Golden Cloak. There once was a poor widow who had 3 sons. The 2 elder ones went out to work for their living, and while at home they were of little use, as they seldom did as their mother wished, whatever she might say to them. But the youngest lad always remained at home, and helped the old widow in her daily occupations. Hence he was much beloved by his mother, but disliked by his brothers, who in mockery gave him the nickname of Pinkel. One day the old widow said to her sons, "You must all go abroad in the world, and seek your fortunes while you can. I am no longer able to feed you here at home, now that you are grown up." The lads answered that they wished for nothing better, since it was contrary to their mother's will that they should remain at home. They then prepared for their departure, and set out on their journey, but after wandering about from place to place, were unable to procure any employment. After journeying thus for a long time, they came late one evening to a vast lake. Far out in the water there was an island, on which there appeared a strong light, as of fire. The lads stopped on shore observing the wondrous light, and thence concluded that there must be human beings in the place. As it was now dark, and the brothers knew not where to find a shelter for the night, they resolved on taking a boat that lay among the reeds, and rowing over to the island to beg a lodging. With this view they placed themselves in the boat and rowed across. On approaching the island, they perceived a little hut standing at the water's edge, on reaching which they discovered that the bright light that shone over the neighborhood proceeded from a golden lantern that stood at the door of the hut. In the yard without, a large goat was wandering about, with golden horns, to which small bells were fastened, that gave forth a pleasing sound whenever the animal moved. The brothers wondered much at all this, but most of all at the old crone, who with her daughter inhabited the hut. The crone was both old and ugly, but was sumptuously clad in a pelisse of cloak, worked so artificially with golden threads that it glittered like burnished gold in every hem. The lads saw now very clearly that they had come to no ordinary human being, but to a troll. After some deliberation the brothers entered, and saw the crone standing by the fireplace and stirring with a ladle in a large pot that was boiling on the hearth. They told their story and prayed to be allowed to pass the night there, but the crone answered "No," at the same time directing them to a royal palace, which lay on the other side of the lake. While speaking, she kept looking intently on the youngest boy, as he was standing and casting his eyes over everything in the hut. The crone said to him, "What is thy name, my boy?" The lad answered smartly, "I am called Pinkle." The troll then said, "Thy brothers can go their way, but thou shalt stay here, for thou appearest to me very crafty, and my mind tells me that I have no good to expect from thee if thou shouldst stay long at the king's palace." Pinkel now humbly begged to be allowed to accompany his brothers, and promised never to cause the crone harm or annoyance. At length he also had leave to depart, after which the brothers hastened to the boat, not a little glad that all 3 had escaped so well in this adventure. Toward the morning they arrived at a royal palace, larger and more magnificent than anything they had ever seen before. They entered and begged for employment. The eldest 2 were received as helpers in the royal stables, and the youngest was taken as page to the king's young son. And being a sprightly, intelligent lad, he soon won the good will of everyone, and rose from day to day in the king's favor. At this his brothers were sorely nettled, not injured that he should be preferred to themselves. At length they consulted together how they might compass the fall of their young brother, in the belief that afterwards they should prosper better than before. They therefore presented themselves one day before the King, and gave him an exaggerated account of the beautiful lantern that shed light over both land and water, adding that it ill beseemed the King to lack so precious a jewel. On hearing this, the King's attention was excited, and he asked, "Where is this lantern to be found, and who can procure it for me?" The brothers answered, "No one can do that unless it be our brother Pinkel. He knows best where the lantern is to be found." The King was now filled with a desire to obtain the golden lantern about which he had heard tell, and commanded the youth to be called. When Pinkel came, the King said, "If thou canst procure me the golden lantern that shines over land and water, I will make thee the chief man in my whole court." The youth promised to do his best to execute his lord's behest, and the King praised him for his willingness, but the brothers rejoiced at heart, for they well knew it was a perilous undertaking, which could hardly terminate favorably. Pinkel now prepared a little boat, and, unaccompanied by any one, rowed over to the little island inhabited by the troll Crone. When he arrived it was already evening, and the Crone was busied in boiling porridge for supper, as was her custom. The youth, creeping softly up to the roof, cast from time to time a handful of salt through the chimney, so that it fell down into the pot that was boiling on the hearth. When the porridge was ready, the Crone had begun to eat. She could not conceive what had made it so salt and bitter. She was out of humor, and chided her daughter, thinking that she had put too much salt into the porridge. But let her dilute the porridge as she might, it could not be eaten, so salt and bitter it was. She then ordered her daughter to go to the well that was just at the foot of the hill and fetch water, in order to prepare fresh porridge. The maiden answered, "How can I go to the well? It is so dark out of doors that I cannot find the way over the hill." "Then take my gold lantern," said the Crone peevishly. The girl took the beautiful gold lantern accordingly, and hastened away to fetch the water. But as she stooped to lift the pail, Pinkel, who was on the watch, seized her by the feet and cast her headlong into the water. He then took the golden lantern and betook himself in all haste to his boat. In the meantime the Crone was wondering why her daughter stayed out so long, and at the same moment, chancing to look through the window, she saw the light gleaming far out on the water. At this sight she was sorely vexed, and hurrying down to the shore, cried aloud, "Is that thou, Pinkel?" The youth answered, "Yes, dear mother, it is I." The Troll continued, "Art thou not a great knave?" The lad answered, "Yes, dear mother, I am so." The Crone now began to lament and complain, saying, "Ah, what a fool was I to let thee go from me! I might have been sure thou wouldst play me some trick. If thou ever comest hither again, thou shalt not escape." And so the matter rested for that time. Pinkel now returned to the King's palace, and became the chief person at court, as the King had promised. But when the brothers were informed what complete success he had had in his adventure, they became yet more envious and embittered than before, and often consulted together how they might accomplish the fall of their young brother and gain the King's favor for themselves. Both brothers went, therefore, a second time before the King, and began relating at full length about the beautiful goat with the horns of the purest gold, from which little gold bells were suspended, which gave forth a pleasing sound whenever the animal moved. They added that it ill became so rich a king to lack so costly a treasure. On hearing their story, the King was greatly excited, and said, "Where is this gold to be found, and who can procure it for me?" The brothers answered, "That no one can do unless it be our brother Pinkel, for he knows best where the gold is to be found." The King then felt a strong desire to possess the goat with the golden horns, and therefore commanded the youth to appear before him. When Pinkel came, the King said, Thy brothers have been telling me of a beautiful goat with horns of the purest gold and little bells fastened to the